Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets, how to increase your market business success while providing people with fresh food. Farmers markets are essential. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast. On this week's episode, we're talking about creating an annual or end-of-year report for your farmers market. I'm one of your hosts, Bridget Myers. I'm a longtime Farmers Market Manager, Vendor 101 co-teacher, and Education Coordinator at Farmers Market Pros.
And I'm Kat Fields-White, Director of San Diego Markets, still an active Farmers Market Manager and consultant, founder of Farmers Market Pros, and host of Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, and the Farmers Market Pros community.
And I'm Justine Marzoni-Mead, Tent Talk producer, marketing director for Farmers Market Pros, and logistics coordinator for Intense, the Farmers Market Conference 2022.
Coming up so soon.
Coming at ya.
Yeah, we just announced another round of speakers, which we're so excited about. We have all of these are the ones that we just announced are returning speakers that we loved so much from last year that we're bringing back.
Bringing them back. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, they got nice reviews, so here they come again.
And we had Molly on kind of a flash round in 2021, so I know everybody wants to hear more from her. Molly Balance, she's amazing Farmhouse Creative Instagram advisor and mentor, a social media guru.
A lot of people were like, wait, is she done? Can she still be talking, please? So yeah, we're really excited that she's coming back. I learned a lot from her session too. So yeah. I'm excited to see what she's bringing to the conference this next year.
Yeah, be exciting. And she's always got some good nuts and bolts thing. I learned so much from her because she really breaks it down for those of us who don't really have it.
For sure. It's not like abstract. It's like, go here and click this and type this in. And that's really helpful.
And same with Melissa and Cedrina last year. Yeah. Or in 2021, I'm so confused with what this year, earlier in the year. But they were both talking about kind of big topics. Melissa talked about fundraising, and Cedrina talked about the anti-racist toolkit for farmers markets. And those two are topics, too, that a lot of times are talked about in ways where people are like, okay, that was so awesome, but what do I do? And both of them are really great at giving actionable items that people could immediately implement into their markets.
And they're doing that again this year. Yeah. So Melissa this year will be talking about an incubator program that they're doing. She's with the British Columbia Farmers Market Association up in Vancouver, and she's talking about their kind of Hatch a New Market program where they incubate new vendors and how they get new vendors through their first year.
Oh, great.
Really, really interesting program.
And it's called Hatch a New Market?
I think, no, it's not called that. I'm messing that up, but it's something like that. Yeah, you know me with the hatch. Hatching new ideas daily. Yeah. Yes. And then Cedrina will be back. She will have an update on the Farmers Market Anti-Racist Toolkit, but she's going to dig really deep on really putting the I in DEI. So do all the things to diversify your market, but then if you don't make that inclusion piece really strong, it's not going to take. It's not going to stick. So she's going to talk about, and as you say, really nuts and bolts ways. She's not just going to give you a philosophical overview, but she's going to tell you these are things that you can do that will make your program move forward.
Great.
Yeah, I love that because sometimes we just get a little stuck and like people have great intentions, but it's just that movement part. Like, what do we do now? Like, actually do to make this, A, B, and C, or, inclusion of these people. How do we get them to the market? Like, what are some actionable tools that we can use for that? And she's really great at kind of explaining that and breaking it down. So I'm excited to listen to her as a market manager. I'm excited to hear what amazing. She has to say.
Yeah, and she's a terrific consultant on those topics. So. Yeah.
Yay, it's going to be good.
Very excited.
So get your tickets, farmersmarketpros.com.
That's right. Still early bird time. Yeah. So you can save a little if you register right now.
Don't forget, it is really nice to see some of our return attendees coming.
Yeah. So many.
Yeah, and we've been talking to some people who are coming back and they're bringing more people with them, their market team. Shout out to my pal Thomasine, bringing a group with her. So excited. So just, seeing people that we haven't seen face-to-face in a little while and then seeing the new people that they have on their team that they're bringing along to the conference because this is a great opportunity to get everybody who works with you on the same page.
That's right. Yeah. And we did talk about, we've talked about the last 2 years or so that COVID and what we've all been experiencing at markets, there was a lot of market staff turnover, or some people that just decided, it's time for me to retire, or it's time for me to retire from farmers market. So we are seeing a lot of new market managers kind of coming in, or new market staff that you added to your team. This is a great way to kind of get them catched up.
Yep, for sure.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market Podcast, is supported by MarketWurks, providing a single, multifaceted tool to manage your markets, schedule your farmers and vendors, create market maps, and maintain up-to-date data on attendance, space rent, sales, and more. Give up that stuffed 3-ring binder and free up your time. Click the MarketWurks logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com to get started today.
Well, welcome back to Tent Talk, everyone. Today we are talking about developing an end-of-year report for your farmers market, whether that's your annual report or a look at this year's milestones.
Yeah, because we know a lot of people, especially if you're working for a municipal organization, a lot of times you'll have a fiscal year annual report, and that may fall in the middle of the year. But even if that's the case, it's cool to do a report at the end of each year just to keep track of milestones. And because some of the people you're reporting to really do think in calendar years. They don't have the whole your friends of the market organization may not be thinking that your year starts in July.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're at a seasonal market, this is going to be a look back at a certain number of months of the year. So it might not be what happened January through December at your market, but wherever your kind of year lands, you can make this report. And just when a year comes to a close, it's nice to kind of just capture what happened in 2021. And
there's a natural thing that we do like at the end of the year to kind of get nostalgic or introspective and kind of be like, oh, well, what did I do this year? So sometimes it is weird if you're like, okay, well, the fiscal year starts in July, especially if your market is seasonal, right? A lot of markets open like April, May, and then all of a sudden it's like July. You're like, I'm not going to talk about what we only did in the first 3 months of the market season.
So, for sure.
What we did in July, August, September of last year, and May, June, and half of July this year. It's like you don't have to break it up that way.
Yeah, I wonder if those folks with the seasonal markets have a tendency to do their annual report kind of at the end of the market season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that would be helpful. And you might have, too, you might have a fiscal annual report that is kind of nuts and bolts and hard numbers, and it's more of just like a report that's typed out that can be presented. But we're kind of talking about a review report where it includes those numbers, may or may not include those numbers, and then also talks about what kind of things you did at the market, what kind of activities, what kind of milestones did you hit, what were some issues that you solved, and things like that. So, we got plenty of those.
And it's good just for you.
Yeah.
I mean, we get caught up in the everyday, okay, we got to get through today, we got to get into the next thing, we got to deal with this emergency. It was really fun when you started dragging out some of our recent, annual reports before COVID, recent ones, and just looking at, oh yeah, we did a lot. Wow, forgot about that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little kind of like pat yourself on the back moment of just like, we did all this stuff. And reminding yourself of all the hard work that you and your team put in over the course of the year. Yeah. So that's a really good reason to do it. But why else, kind of in a more, businessy way, why would you make an end-of-year report or an annual report?
Well, a lot of times you have accountability to your boss or your host organization or your market board. So, markets are structured a lot of different ways. It could be that you're working for a big health organization or more often a city or community, and they hire you to manage that market, and they want to know what you've been up to. They want to see some data. They want to see if you're improving.
So what have you been doing?
What direction we've been going. So a lot of times that's required, and you have to turn in that kind of report. If you're a contract manager where a nonprofit or some kind of other organization has hired you to manage their market, that's another pretty typical kind of structure. You've got to report to that organization at least once a year a lot of times. And in some ways, you're just letting them know what you've been up to. And sometimes it's part of a renewal of contract. So you want to show them just how well you've done last year so that they'll renew that contract and use the same manager the next year.
Yeah.
Not a lot of organizations switch up their manager year to year, but it happens. So you kind of keep selling yourself and your team and what you do.
Job security.
Yeah.
That's right. And then other organizations have a board so some markets operate as a cooperative or as a farm coalition, and so you want to go back to your board if you're the manager. A lot of times there's a staff and then there's a tiny staff and a big board. That's pretty common, actually. And so you want to go back to your board and update them on, these are the things you voted on all year, and this is how we implemented all those ideas, those lofty ideas that you came up with this as a manager and a team. This is how we implemented all of those, and this is the progress we're making on maybe a long-term strategic plan.
Yeah, you can talk about any challenges that happened with things you tried to do and how you navigated that. You can even say, hey, we gave this a shot. It didn't work out for this and this reason, so we're doing this instead. And that we've got, really great customer feedback on our new plan of action. So kind of showing people how you pivot, showing people progress with projects at the market and things like that. Yeah. And this report is just really great for all the people that you say, oh, yeah, I run a market on Saturdays. And they go, oh, what do you do Sunday through Friday?
You just email it to all your friends that don't understand your job.
Yeah.
This is why I can't go out on Friday night.
This is why I work at an office during the week, during the day. I'm doing stuff for the Saturday market.
Yeah.
You just post it on your social media for all your friends.
Yeah. And that makes sense what you were saying earlier, too, about the board, voting on different things. And I could see it being really helpful to kind of report on like long-term plans that you're like, hey, we decided to make our seasonal market a year-round market, and end-of-year report could be really helpful to see whether that was a good decision or how that transition is going, and if it's going to take 3 more seasons to make it really bumpin', or kind of just report back on stuff like that.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're going to show these kind of things to your community. I'm going to say maybe not as often in general, but especially if you have a Friends of the Market type organization that's affiliated with your market that you use for fundraising, that, maybe you do an annual dinner or events where the community themselves can donate to your market to help with overhead and EBT and that kind of thing. This kind of a report can be a great way to show them what their dollars accomplished, and especially when you're doing it at this time of year when we're coming up on Giving Tuesday and all those times that people want to throw a little more money at their favorite charities so that they get the tax deduction in this year. This is a great time to say, look what your dollars accomplished this year, and wouldn't you like to see us do more?
Exactly. This is a great thing to share with your sponsors and say, look, this is what we're doing with your generous donation. Look at all this great stuff that's happening at the market. This is where your dollars are going. And then they can share with their groups and say, hey, I sponsored this market. Look at how great this market is going. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a nice thing to kind of pass around and pat yourself on the back, and then also show them really specifically where their donation is going and what the funds are being used for.
Not for market manager parties. That's for sure.
Yeah. Maybe you'll get a specific sponsor for that. Because we
let's do that.
So appreciative of your efforts.
Okay, so it's clear there's lots of reasons why to do such a thing, but what do you even put in your annual report? Like what is it, a packet? Is it what's inside of it? What does it look like, and what does it include?
Well, I have a really great annual report here that I've created. So I'm just looking at, things that are here. I kind of start out with a letter from the market manager. So you can just say, we've really grown this year. We overcame these challenges. If you moved locations, you can discuss how that was a transition period, but it was great, and how we're really grateful for our dedicated shoppers. And, it's just like a little letter about the market. It's a little introduction.
Kind of a morale boost.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And this can be good, too, if you're sharing this with your farmers and vendors. This kind of an intro can be great.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then, include some photos of the market itself, some photos of regular shoppers or local business owners who come and shop at the market. So just discuss your tie-in with the neighborhood. And just kind of start it out that way. That's usually how I say, hey, we're the market, a little bit about who you are, too, because maybe this reports will be kind of shared around with people who don't really understand maybe what your job is as a market manager. Yeah.
Boards of directors of host organizations.
Yeah, so kind of explain that. And then, I always kind of put the dates on there. So this report is from, January to December, or however you're going to date your report. This was the market days and hours. And then looking back and just kind of bullet pointing some fun things that happened at the market, or even not so fun things. I mean, in 2021, you could bullet point, we had to overcome these obstacles, staffing shortages, enforcing COVID safety protocols.
Vendor turnover
for sure. Any kind of losses or anything like that. But then also, we made strong connections with our regular shoppers because they were so grateful that they could shop at the market and feel safe. So you don't really have to write a long story. I wouldn't make it too dense. You got to kind of know your audience, like who you're sharing it with.
I mean, and in your report here, you picked some highlights, you did some bullet points. So these were our big triumphs. These are the ways we overcame a couple of major challenges. So people aren't going to read a real dense report a lot of times, so that the lead into the report, you can want to kind of bullet point it and make sure that it's simple to get the points across that you want to.
Yeah, for sure. In this report, we're talking about moving a market. So it's one of the bullet points is increased pedestrian visibility. Boosted parking accessibility because we moved adjacent to a 6-story parking garage. Just things that, highlights about the market that happened in the past year. And then again, it's just some photos from the market of people shopping and having a good time. It's nice to make, if you're going to make a nice annual report packet, to have some visuals in there. Yeah. Have it be colorful so it's not just this dense, Word document report. Make it fun because markets are fun and you want to show, what your market's all about. So, and then just talk about some activities that happened at your market, if you did any. I know 2021 is probably a little tricky for listing those, but if you had any kind of chef demos, who it was, if it was a local chef, maybe call them out by name. If you did any kind of ribbon cutting, like opening ceremony, you can talk about that and who was there. If you had any local dignitaries or local celebrities come out for that, how did that go? And then,
or if you participated in National Farmers Market Week.
That'd be a good one to tell what kind of activities you did for that and who got involved, maybe kids' activities.
Yeah, kids' activities. Even if it was something simple, like we put a table out for kids to color pumpkins, around Halloween. Just something simple.
How many I Love Farmers Market temporary tattoos did we distribute and apply?
There's a stat number for you. If you do any kind of customer counting, which we should do a better job of, and we don't do much of that at our market, but if you're doing any of those kind of dot surveys or counting customers or surveying customers, include that data in these reports because that's all really interesting information that people want to hear.
Yeah, and shout out to Thomasine again, because her market in Texas just celebrated their 20,000th customer for the year.
Right, and they're a relatively small market, or they started out very small, and she's increased the size of that market so much, but they do count customers, and I loved the way they really celebrated that. They did a big picture. They, gave them stickers and buttons and welcome and acknowledgement.
Yeah. And if you're looking, we've talked about this a lot about how by nature the market is kind of tough. It's tricky to gather data because you're so busy and there's lots going on. But if you need tips on that, we did an episode with Dar Welnick maybe 6 months ago, and she gave lots of really simple ways to collect data at your market. And Farmers Market Coalition has a lot of helpful tools of how to do that too. So if you are doing that, and Ben Feldman always jokes about collecting data and then not doing anything with it. So if you're collecting data, this could be a great outlet for where to put all that info that you've collected over the last couple of years.
It'll make it feel so worth it. If you have somewhere to put it down on paper and share it, take that hard-earned data that you've collected and put that somewhere where people can see it and present it. For sure.
And we have kind of a list of kinds of data that you might want to include. So market income, what you're taking in terms of space rent, sponsor support, maybe friends of a market support kind of thing. So a breakdown of your market income, the number of vendors, the number of farmers, and the number of shoppers, and maybe how those went up and down. There's a good chance to drag out your graph or pie chart making skills. Increase or decrease in farmer and vendor sales. Hopefully increase all the time, but you have those moments, you have those challenges with locations or pandemics or things that might affect that.
All those pandemics.
May as well talk about it and then talk about your goals for next time. Your EBT SNAP benefits distributed and also redeemed, that's a huge number to pass around and make people realize just how important what you're doing is and how their contributions help you do that.
And that would be a really important one, too, for this year because we've been talking about how our market has seen such an increase in EBT and SNAP and WIC, and probably at your market you've seen that as well as EBT and SNAP benefits have been distributed to more people. So, if maybe your end-of-year report or annual report is kind of slim in those event areas and you want to fill space, that would be a great thing to talk about.
That's a good one to do. Mm-hmm. And then in some cases, depending on who you're reporting to, your net to the nonprofit, if you're operating a market that's also a fundraiser for a community group, how much of that was netted back to the community can be important to do. And I know there's some organizations that prefer not to publicize that. They don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of how much they're netting because people forget that there are expenses then that are funded by that net, and so they make assumptions that everybody's out in the limo tonight. But some of them really do want to show what they do, what they contribute to the local economy, what kind of funds they bring in. And a lot of time, if you're going to talk about your net, maybe also talk about what those funds are being used for. We netted this much, and that funded 17 new flower pots on corners, or 72 power washes of the local neighborhood sidewalks, or the kinds of things that those funds are often going towards.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, and maybe too, like, I don't know if this would go in it if your market, like, purchased a big new piece of equipment, or, hey, we finally purchased a new generator, and that's going to help us run lights for our evening market, or something fun that you know, a generator seems boring, but if people know that,
it's lights.
Yeah, if it's going to be lights and it's going to look really nice and it's going to make it safer for people to shop in the evening, then that could be something that you include.
Yeah, people know those items are expensive, so they'll look at your, revenue and then say, oh, well, you made these big purchases, and not, like you said, make the assumption that we're all just living large, these market managers rolling around town.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but again, if those hard numbers are more appropriate for like a financial fiscal calendar report, just save those hard numbers for that. And you can always say we increased revenue by 12%, or we added 10% more farmers and vendor spaces to the market. We increased another block. You can talk about space increase and things like that to still explain how your market is thriving and growing, but not put like hard dollar amounts in there if it doesn't seem appropriate for your annual report.
And for the audience that you're presenting to at that time. Sometimes you take annual reports and cast them 2 or 3 different ways and then distribute to the appropriate audience.
For sure. That's a great idea, like making a good solid annual report and then just tweaking a couple things. So you can post it on your social media.
Yeah.
You can share it with your sponsors. You can share it with the neighboring businesses at your market. So just kind of think about what each audience is going to be interested in and wants to hear about.
Totally. And we talked about this in the past too when we discussed like markets ending for the season and telling you, you have to keep your social media active, you have to keep your newsletters active. So if you can find a way to make this exciting or kind of make it infographic, these are things that you can share even when your market isn't open for the season to kind of remind everybody we're still here and we're planning for next year and we're reflecting on what we've done this last calendar year. So it's all stuff to talk about.
Yeah, keeping people engaged.
Yeah, in that in-between space. And you can always kind of chop it up and just post one part of your report to kind of always got to get that content going. So that's different content pieces.
So how do you collect all that data?
So that's the important part, I think, and as we head into a new year, something to think about for a new year especially is that you want to be I always keep like a doc open throughout the year, and I jot stuff in there throughout the year as it happens. Because, yes, you can sit down at the end of the year and reflect back on everything, but it is a little bit easier if you're just tracking it all year, like things to include. But if you're doing your first report right now, I think kind of getting with your team and having a little brainstorm session about things that happened, because you might forget, like, oh, yeah, we did that great special event back in June. It was awesome. Or remember when this happened and we were able to figure it out because we did this back in February of 2021. Those little things get lost. So I think a little brainstorming session with your staff. And then I always look back at our social media posts. And that helps.
That's smart.
That helps
me. It timestamps things.
It timestamps it for you, so I can say, oh, did that happen in 2021 or 2020? And kind of look back and say, oh, yeah, it happened this year, so I can include it. So use things that are starting to, or your email newsletters. Those are great, too. You can kind of rifle through those and try to pick out some great anecdotes to include.
Yeah. And, of course, you're using spreadsheets, rosters, invoicing programs. We invoice our vendors now online rather than collect in person, as we did in the pre-COVID old days. So those Square is what we use for invoicing, and it can give you terrific reports. You can look at those kind of aggregated reports. A lot of the market management programs now, or at least a couple that I'm familiar with that are doing a really good job, have really good data collection functions where you can easily pull up how your vendor count changed over the year or how sales went, whether they went up and down for farmers and vendors, how many people you placed, what your space rent was. So that all comes straight out of your market management programs or the spreadsheets that you're pasting together to make a market management program.
Linking all those Google Docs together.
That's right.
Yeah, but there's information out there. It might take a little, day or two to kind of comb through everything and pull out all the pieces that you want to share and include in your report.
Yeah.
What else do we include? I always do a really great shout out and thank you. So the things that you might think of to start to people to thank is like your board of directors or the city or whoever's kind of your people above you. But I also try to shout out like the neighboring businesses. If you're blocking parking in front of someone's business, it's a good idea to give them a little thank you at the end of the year.
That's nice.
And not thank you for letting us block your parking, but thank you to our neighbor, Frost Me for being our market neighbor. Just, we've enjoyed all the coffee. You kept all of us caffeinated all year long or something like that. So not as a negative, but as a positive relationship with your neighboring businesses. So that's a really great thing to do. Any kind of specific special shoppers that come out or chefs that regularly shop the market, those are really great people to thank. And then, of course, your sponsors, board of directors, anybody who's helped you. If you have a great local printer that's giving you a discount on printed posters for your market, give them a little shout out. There's
idea.
A lot of people to thank.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and then and also if you're a market that does any special like sustainability initiatives, you might want to talk about that. Like if you do composting or if you do I know they haven't done it. They didn't do it during COVID, but the Portland Farmers Market does that like
durable
dining program. Maybe you can calculate how many plates and spoons you saved from landfills or how many pounds of trash that you've saved or something like that. That is like a really like wow number that your community can get behind and get excited about.
Yeah, for sure. If there's a vendor or a farmer who did a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter to expand their business, you can say one of our vendors has a brand new commercial kitchen because they did this great Kickstarter program and all the other vendors and shoppers rallied behind them. So just talking about those kind of growth points and things that happened. For 2021, you might talk about how you maybe added a drive-through or a drive-up pickup system to your market that you had never done before. It might have kind of came over from 2020, but you can talk about how you kept it going and how many boxes were picked up or delivered.
Well, that's a good data point.
Yeah, for sure. And then talk about it had such a great response, so we continued to keep it as a part of the market, or people really were grateful to get back to shopping on site, and so we let that go for this year, but it was really great while it happened, and we helped a lot of people get groceries. Things like that. Yeah.
Great achievements.
Yep.
So you have all this stuff, you put it all together, and then we talked a little bit about like what it looks like making sure that you include photos and stuff like that. But any other tips for like what the actual report, like what form does it take? Is it a PDF? Is it a...
It can go, I've done them on Word documents before. Now I use Canva because they have they have like a report template. They have a million templates. Yeah, so they have, you just pop your logo in there and use the little boxes that they have to list stuff. And depending on what you're sharing, you can kind of finagle those boxes around a little bit. But so you want to think of it as kind of telling a story. So you don't want to start out with, in 2022, we're going to do these things.
Yeah.
I always start out with like a letter, and then I say looking back and starting from the beginning of your season or the beginning
like chronologically.
Of the year. Keep it chronological for sure. You can add those revenue numbers in there, and then I always like to highlight the social media following. So,
that's smart.
I would say, if you're thinking about next year, I would say document what your social media following is January 1st. Like we have this many followers on Instagram and on Facebook, so you can kind of compare that with the number at the end of the year. You can dig into your back end of social media and find that number. I always get a little confused looking for that, but it is in there.
Yeah, you can check if you have a business account, there's like an analytics section that you can check.
But. Yeah, so try to see look for increased or look at the following count by date. So you can look back in January of last year, and then you can compare it to what it is now. And even if it's grown by 500 followers, that's fantastic. Even if you don't have a huge following on your social media, if you've been posting regularly, you can shout it out and say, hey, we've been using this. We get great interaction from our dedicated shoppers. Here's a couple example photos that we've posted and things that people like to see at the market.
Which photos got the most engagement?
Yeah.
If you don't have a huge change in numbers, you may still have a significant increase in percentage of followers. So you can always phrase it that way.
For sure. Yeah. So this doesn't have to be if you have 30,000 followers on your Instagram. You can have 1,000 follower Instagram and still talk about, all the great stuff that's going on there. So I always like to put those on there. Any kind of write-ups you got from local papers. And that might be something that has happened more in the past year because, local businesses have been highlighted a lot more, and shopping habits and cost of goods and supply chain interruption issues. So there might be a fair amount of press out there. And even if it's not specifically about your market, you can always toss, the New York Times wrote an article about how farmers market shopping was more, people felt more safe shopping there, and just put a little blurb about that in there. It doesn't have to be specifically about your market, but anything that's written up about farmers markets and how it's a great place to shop is something to include in this report for sure.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah. But the possibilities are endless. You can make a 50-page report. Mine are usually about 3 or 4 pages. I try to keep it to a size where people are going to actually read it. I want them to see all the material in there. So again, with those bullet points and kind of short snippets.
And you've done a nice job with them recently where you put them on a 4-page brochure format. So I can't remember what that dimension is, but it folds to 8.5 by 11 and it's 4 pages and it just opens. And those are really relatively inexpensive to print either at your local printer or at an online printer like Next Day Flyers, something like that. So you can include color pictures for a relatively low print cost and have what feels like a nice piece to hand out to people.
That'd be fun. I mean, especially if it's a public-facing document, to even have a couple copies at your info booth. If somebody, is visiting and interested in a sponsorship or just really curious about your market, or maybe they're opening a business in the area and they want more information, just to be able to be like, here's a really succinct roundup of kind of everything you need to know about our market.
Or if you're trying to recruit a great farmer or vendor to join your market, having something like that shows them that you're really engaged with marketing and that your market is a growing, thriving entity and that it's an important part of the community. So it can be sort of a nice sales piece too if you're trying to increase the number of vendors and farmers at your market.
Yeah, it's a nice piece of marketing material for sure. And kind of shows how involved you are in keeping track of all that information and how much you care and how much you know what a difference your market's making.
Yeah.
Self-assured. If you're just like a new market starting out, this is a great tool for you to think about your market in a different way and to really analyze your market in a different way. And it'll teach you a lot about what's going on in your market if you're making this report. So even if you don't know what you're going to put in it, I would suggest everyone just sit down and just try and just see what comes out. And maybe it's a 1-page report. Or maybe it's a postcard report with a couple bullet points. It does not have to be a huge packet. So just putting something together that's reflective of the last year. And then I always include on the last page coming up this next year.
Oh, good.
So even if you don't have any big things planned, you can say coming up, like what a great response we had to those chef demos. We're definitely going to plan more of those in 2022. We're looking forward to our spring festival at the market with the Easter Bunny and some coloring pages for kids. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Just name some things that you're going to do next year. And, people like to read that stuff.
They do.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Give them a little glance.
If you sit down this year and try to make one and you realize that you don't have any information, just write an outline of stuff that you can collect in 2022.
That's right.
Yeah, and it is toward the end of the year right now, and I know we're all getting so crazy, and so this might seem really daunting and overwhelming for 2021, and that's okay. So just start off with 2022, make a New Year's resolution to track your data so that you have a really robust and great report for the end of 2022. You'll thank yourself later. You really will.
You will. Yeah. Definitely. And I want to say, when you said it can be as simple as a postcard, for sure. Yeah. Print a half-page postcard with a couple of nice pictures of your market. Here's our report for 2021. Farmers markets turned out to absolutely be essential. We survived. Go us. See you next year. There you go.
That's as simple as it needs to be.
If your report is I survived 2021, that's great.
That's good.
It's just a Post-it that says I survived. That's it. Heading into 2022.
And you just put it on your mirror.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, report to you because you're the most important.
That's what I have on my mirror. Then I always kind of include if you participated in any neighborhood events. That's always good to say, like, hey, you also did stuff at these other events. We attend 2021, again, is a little tricky for this because there probably was less neighborhood events, community events, but typically we have a table at like the concerts in the park or the annual holiday parade. We march down there and Kat wears her grape suit. So get a good picture of that if anyone dresses up. If you dressed up for Halloween, we saw a lot of great markets that dressed up for Halloween at their market. Post those pictures in there because it's like, look, we're having fun at our markets. Everyone appreciated coming here and being able to kind of let go of the stress and just shop and have a good time. So any kind of fun photos you have, your staff high-fiving or maybe fist bumping or elbow bumping, whatever we did last year. And then just kind of including things that maybe you're looking forward to in the next year. Say we can't wait to get back to concerts in the park or, this big fall festival that usually happens that was canceled this year. Hopefully it'll be happening next year. And we always have a booth, handing out carrots or whatever you do at the events.
Coloring pages for the kids.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yep. And then the most important thing, if you're coming to the conference, is to include that you're taking your team to get further educated at the Intense conference.
That's right. There you go. That'd be a good thing to tell people.
So we always put that in our annual report that we are part of, a continuing education business as well. And we have Vendor 101 and we have the conference every year. And so I put a little information in there. And then if you want to put a line in there about how you can support the market, depending on who your audience is, put your sponsorship link in there and everything. And then very, very important is to put the day and time and name of your market and your address and
that's right.
Where they can find you, because you don't know, even if you're handing this to your board of directors who hopefully knows all that information, they might not be paying attention and they might hand it out, they might share it with people, and so just put that information in there. Put your contact information on there in case anyone has a question. Like, tell me more about how you increased vendor spaces at your market.
Yeah. And moreover, where are you? When does it happen? How can I come shop?
Yep. Yeah. So all those important details, you can wrap it up with that. And that's what we do for our reports. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that can be included. You'll be surprised if you sit down and try to think about it. There's lots of things that are happening at your market, no matter if your market has 10 vendors or 300. There's stuff happening there. So get it out there and give yourself a pat on the back.
That's right.
Yeah. Great. Well, it just sounds like a really great way to reflect, look back at all that you've done, and create new goals for the next year.
Yeah, it always makes me feel very useful as a market manager.
That's right.
Oh, look.
And tired.
That's right. And exhausted.
Thanks for listening today. And big thanks to MarketWurks for helping farmers market managers by putting all of the tools to succeed in one place, and maybe all of the data to gather for your annual report, and for supporting Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. Find more information and sign up by clicking the MarketWurks logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Farmers markets are all about connection, and all of us, operators, farmers, and vendors, keep learning. Join us and your fellow market participants at the 6th Annual Intense, the Farmers Market Conference in San Diego, California on March 7th, 8th, and 9th, 2022 to grow your market and your community. Connect with people just like you from various parts of the country and share what's happening in your area in the terrific conversations over in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. If you're actively involved in a farmer's market, please find us there, answer the 3 qualifying questions, and join the group. You can also message us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros or email us at connect@farmersmarketpros.com. If you're just getting started in farmers markets, check out our Vendor 101 online course at farmersmarketpros.com. Thanks for listening to Tent Talk. Please leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you access your podcast, and tell us and others how you're enjoying Tent Talk. If you are listening on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss the next episode. Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is proudly produced by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Justine Marzoni-Mead. Original music by David Mead. Thank you so much for listening today, and we'll have another great episode next week. Tune in.